Hi everyone. I know for some of you guys it's been some time since you've looked at marketing, and so I wanted to do this brief video recording to try to give you a little bit of a marketing refresher. So I think it's important to understand what is marketing. And the American Marketing Association defines marketing as the activity, set of institutions and processes for creating, communicating, delivering, and exchanging offers that have value for customers, clients, partners, and society at large. Sounds like a really busy definition, doesn't it? Well, I think if we break that down, it'll become a lot more familiar to you. First, what do we create? We create products, which could be a good or a service. How do we communicate? We communicate through promotion. So whenever you hear the word promotion, just simply think that's just a form of communication. Where do we deliver? We deliver at a place, and we'll certainly create value depending upon where we're going to have our goods located. And lastly, we'll exchange those offerings at a price typically. And we'll do it in a way that has value for our customers. And even if we think internally, it'll have value for all stakeholders and our partners in society at large. So with that definition in mind, then, it's important to understand how do we create value for people? How do we create value? Well, exchange theory suggests that for every dollar we've ever given, in return, we felt like we were getting equal to or greater value. So what that means is any dollar you've ever given up for anything you've ever bought, at the time, you felt like you were getting equal to or greater value in exchange. And I think that's an important thing to understand because based on that, then, we have to understand, well, how do I create value so that with a fundamental understanding of how I create value, I can do more things that create value for that end consumer, and in return, I'll make more money, and in that way, I'll create wealth. And I think that's what marketing is all about. That kind of differentiates it from accounting or finance, because marketing is really about wealth creation as opposed to wealth management. And so with that in mind, then, we have to think about, well, then who are we going to create value for? And it's unrealistic to think everybody's going to respond in a similar way to our offerings, right? To what we believe is going to create value. You might have no value in a minivan, yet the family with 4 kids has a lot of value in a minivan, right? And so we have to think, well, how do we differentiate people? How do we choose who's going to be our target market? And so we looked at breaking down or segmenting groups of people geographically, demographically, psychographically, and behaviorally. Geographically, I think we fundamentally understand as to whereabouts they're located. Demographically, we start to think about things such as age, gender, that kind of those things that are typically captured in a Stats Canada type of form. The psychographic, psycho being the mind, right? So what are your individual attitudes? What are your individual beliefs here? And behavioral, whenever you hear behavioral, think of how do we behave towards the object? Are we a user, non-user? Are we a light user, a heavy user? I could ask the question, how many of you guys drink coffee? And based on that, I would know right away if you're a non-coffee drinker, maybe you're an occasional coffee drinker, and then there's probably those coffee drinkers who drink 2 to 3 cups a day. If I was selling coffee, I'd probably choose those heavy users as those folks that I think would be a really strong target market for me. So right away we begin to understand how to break things down, how to start to identify people, how people are different. Yet there are some things that make us all the same. And I think it's important that we remember what those things are. And so I know that all of you guys at some point have been hungry or thirsty. I know all of you guys have been at some point scared. I know all of you guys at some point have been lonely. I know all of you guys at some point felt really, really good about yourselves, about maybe doing really awesome on an assignment, and really, really bad about yourselves as well at times. And I know when everything's going your way, that you like to help other people. And so that's based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He kind of felt that those are the fundamental needs that are going to be motivating you to do something. So if you're hungry, you're going to eat. If you're scared, you're going to do something. So you might buy a dog, set up an alarm system. If you're an American, you probably go out and buy a gun. you've felt lonely at times, right? And I think this is where Facebook, why so many people use Facebook, it's because that sense of love and belonging, right? So we're connecting with family, we're connecting with friends. It's providing us with that sense of love and belonging that our body craves in a similar way that you crave a sandwich when you're hungry, or in a similar way that you're going to be motivated to put locks on the door and lock your home at night if you're scared of your neighbors. So those are the things that are fundamentally motivating you. And I think that's something that we all have in common. So it's important to you to understand, what do we have in common? And then we can start to bridge that and start to understand, well, what can we offer? How can we create value that's going to be satisfying some of these needs? But when we think about then, what is it that the consumer, or what is it that people, how are they going to be motivated? We can think about, well, we know that individually people have different experiences, and they've learned things over their experiences over their lifetimes that have kind of formed their attitudes and beliefs. And those attitudes and beliefs will help shape your purchase decisions. We understand that, right? So you might prefer Japanese made cars, you might prefer German made cars, you might prefer North American made cars. And each of those are your attitudes and beliefs. And a lot of that might be based on experience, but a lot of it too is just you've learned that over time. So we know that's going to be influencing you. We also know that the culture you're in is going to be influencing you. So what is your family using? What groups do you belong to? So are there any reference groups that you compare yourselves to? Are you a member of a group? Are you a member of a club? Uh, those things will be having influence on you. What culture are you in? What subcultures do you belong to? I like to use the example of smokers. Smokers are very interesting to me because uh, it doesn't matter what your background is. As soon as you're outside having a cigarette, suddenly everybody's friendly, everybody's talking, because they all belong to that same little subculture. They're all smokers. I think that's very interesting. So beyond that, we know that there's some situational influences on you, and if the task is complex, so if the purchase decision is complex, we have this complex purchase decision. I think this is critical to remember. If you have a task that your consumers doesn't do very often, might be a little bit more involved in terms of personal risk, in terms of financial risk, then we have to look at this complex purchase decision model. And so the consumer comes across a need, a problem, that they say, hey, I need a new car to get back and forth to work. Hey, I need to move because the neighborhood I'm in is not that great, or I want to move closer to schools. Whatever that problem is that then they'll do the information search. Now, some of the information search is going to be based on those things that we've already discussed, the psychological influence, the social cultural influence, but they're going to be looking for a lot of information. Here, the marketer has to understand that I need to get to my target market during this information search if I'm selling a complex problem, or sell a complex product. And so I think it's critical to understand that that's what your consumer's doing. Your consumer's looking for a lot of information. They're going to evaluate that information, and they're going to choose what is the most important things to me. And that becomes their consideration set. So for if you choose, for example, I want a computer that's simple to use, maybe you'll choose Apple because Apple's try to position themselves in their target market's mind as being simple to use for the end consumer. And I think that's important to understand that during that information search, we need to be out there communicating our brand strengths so that when it comes to evaluating us, we're being judged based on our strengths. And I think that's an important thing to put out there. The consumer will then make a purchase decision, and then there's always some kind of a post-purchase behavior, that cognitive dissonance or something you know better as buyer's remorse. And so it's important too that there's an opportunity for us as marketers after there's been a purchase decision made to get there and to meet the client, to reassure them that they made the right purchase decision. This is where you'll always see things like Apple phones, and Apple always saying how many phones were sold and demonstrating that social proof that you made the right purchase decision. But again, I keep on reinforcing this idea that we can control and influence some of this conversation through the use of our 4Ps, and specifically through promotion, a lot of it. Promotion, again, just being communication. There's advertising, personal selling, sales promotion, public relations, direct marketing, those emails that you get. We want to make sure we're consistent in the message that we're sending out, and we're certainly demonstrating our strengths here. So when I think of social media now, I think of social media belonging in that public relations category. Social media is a great opportunity to be listening into those conversations, to be engaging in those conversations. When consumers are looking for information, now's your opportunity to engage, to provide them perhaps with some information. And they'll always be there reinforcing your brand and just engaging in a very authentic way with the end consumer. And you know what? When things go wrong, that's okay too. And that'll help you make a better product next time, or that'll be your research and development department. And I think there's a lot of authenticity to that kind of social engagement. So we know then that not only are people unique, but people's needs change over time. And that's where during our introductory marketing course, we had you do what we call the SWOT analysis. So we recognize that there's some things that we can control, our strengths and weaknesses, those factors that are controllable by the company. But then we were looking for these environmental forces, those uncontrollable trends that are going to affect the entire industry. So we have to look at those and see them as big waves coming at us and decide for ourselves, well, how am I going to handle this wave? Am I going to try to be on the top of that wave and kind of surf it through? This is going to be a fantastic experience. Or am I going to ignore it and be at the bottom of the wave and possibly get crushed by the wave? And so that's where we were exploring that SWOT analysis in intermarketing to kind of say, what are the current trends? And then hopefully your organization would get on board with those trends, and those external trends then become that wave that you're going to ride to success for your organization. And just bear in mind that people's preferences change. There's always social trends in different directions. Our demographic makeup of our population changes in terms of what is our ethnic diversity like, in terms of even what is the different age groups. We have a huge group of baby boomers entering into the retirement phase of their lives. And for some organizations, some industries, that'll be a threat to. And for some industries, it'll be a golden opportunity. Nonetheless, it's coming at you like a trend. So what are you going to do to either mitigate the damage or take advantage of the opportunity? And I think that's important. So just to recap then, what we have is we have a choice to make in our organization. And we come up with these mission statements and these visions for our organization to say who we are and define us. But as much as we define ourselves, hopefully we're starting to look around and we're going to divide up the population, segment the population, and choose a target market. Who are we creating value for? And in dialing into that, who we're creating value for, we can really more clearly understand how to create value through the use of our 4Ps. Again, part of the who we create value for might be based a little bit on the SWOT analysis. What are the current trends out there? What is it why now? Why these folks are we creating value for them? And again, those will all come together and form our 4Ps of basically how we're going to create value for that target market. And then going back to the beginning where we began this conversation, looking at how can I increase value, because exchange theory tells me the more value I can create for this target market, the more revenue or wealth I can generate because of the value created. So I've identified place, product, and promotion here as different operational things to be thinking about putting a budget towards. And I left out price because price really represents the opportunity to generate some revenue off of that. And so that's really kind of my summary to introductory to marketing. And just a little bit of that background before we kind of dive into social media. I wanted you to have a stronger context of where kind of social media fits into this opportunity to create value, and in doing so to create wealth.